Hi guys, welcome to this video on exam technique. In this video, we're going to talk about how best to organize your time when you're sitting an exam. Let's get started. So I'm going to suggest there are four main things that you need to do that will help you to organize your time when you're sitting an exam. And those four things are, first of all, to read, then to plan, then to write, and then to check. So let me tell you what I mean by each of these headings: read, plan, write, check. The first thing to do when you sit down in the exam hall, let's say you're sat in there with 50, 60, 100, 200 people, however many it may be, the first thing you're going to do when you're sat there with the paper in front of you is you are going to, once the examiner tells you you can begin, you're going to read the paper. You're going to put your pen down and read the whole paper. You're going to go from the front to the back. You're going to look at all the questions. You're going to read the whole thing. Why are you going to do that? Well, I think you should do that because it gives you a little bit of a sense of where the exam is going. It gives you a bit of an understanding of the topics you're going to have to cover, and it gives you an initial flavour, at least, of how long you might need to spend on the different sections of the exam. It's really helpful for a bunch of reasons. The first reason is it prevents you from just going hell for leather into the first question. It may be that you suffer from examination anxiety of some kind, in which case a really good way of controlling those nerves is to slow down. And by putting your pen down and forcing yourself to start the exam slowly by reading the whole thing, you are starting to get on top of those nerves a little bit. Secondly, by reading the whole paper, you can see what topics are coming up. And it may be that, if you open the first page and turn to the first question, and that question is something that you really are not confident on at all, psychologically speaking, you're going to start fretting potentially at that point. But if you've read through the whole paper and you've seen that maybe question 1 is not your favourite topic, but question 4 is, and question 9 you can definitely do a good job on, and question 17 is something that's right in your ballpark, then you're going to be much more settled and relaxed about answering those other questions. But if you start off with question 1 and you don't know what's coming, it's almost like the fear of the unexpected can kind of overwhelm you. So make sure there's nothing unexpected that's coming up. Have a look through the questions. There's bound to be something in there that you feel comfortable with. And that will then start to settle your nerves, rather than just looking at question 1 and it's pot luck whether or not question 1 is going to be something that you're comfortable with. Don't just look at question 1 and start writing, because if it's something you struggle with, you're on the back foot immediately. So put your pen down, read the whole paper. Secondly, the second heading is to plan. Looking through the whole paper gives you time, or gives you an understanding of how best you can then plan your time in the exam. Again, it might be that there's a long answer question towards the end of the exam that you need to remember is there so that you can leave enough time to answer that question. It might also be, for example, that there's a long answer question and it's one of those questions you think you can do a really good job on. Maybe you should answer that one first. Maybe you should start there. Not only because you could do a good job on that question, but because of the psychological benefit sat in that exam hall where everyone else is stressing around you. You can have that psychological benefit of getting off on the right foot, getting a good answer down for that first question. So plan your time. Think about not just what questions you're going to answer first, but how long you're going to spend on each of the different sections. And you can't really do that if you haven't read the whole paper first. But it really does help to settle the nerves, to have some kind of plan, a plan of attack. What you're going to do first, move on to this next, and complete this finally. And that's going to depend on the type of exam that you're doing. You might find it easy if you've got a mixture of questions in the exam, which is likely. Some exams, for example, have labelling tasks. Maybe you should start with those, if those are questions that are a little bit more simple for you. Maybe you should start with the labelling tasks, get those under your belt, get some marks in the bag, make yourself feel a little bit more comfortable, and then perhaps move on to the longer answer or the discursive questions after that. So read, then plan your time, what you're going to start with. You don't have to do it in order. You don't have to do question 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. You can do it in any order you like. There's no rule to say that you have to do them in numerical order. So you're going to read, then you're going to plan, and then you're going to write. Once you've figured in your head how long you're going to spend on each section, you can have a glance at the clock. I would suggest, in an exam that lasts maybe an hour or an exam that lasts a couple of hours, I'd suggest about 5% of your time at the front end of the exam should be spent reading and planning your plan of attack, reading the paper and deciding what you're going to do first, and so on. That's not wasted time. It might feel like it a little bit, but as long as you don't use half the time to read the paper, as long as you just use a short portion of that time, just a bit of time, that actually can have massive benefits, because it means you can be settled into the exam. So only when you're comfortable, when you're settled, you know what your plan of attack is, then pick up your pen and start writing. Start writing when you're comfortable. And so you can work through the questions in any order you choose, putting down the best answers you can do. And then when you come towards the end of the exam, you should hopefully have been able to plan in a short amount of time at the end of the exam to check your answers. Really important to check your answers at the end. One of the reasons for that is not simply just because double checking is a good practice, but also because if you've got an exam that bounces around various topics and comes back to different ideas repeatedly, you might find that as you write a later answer, it sparks a memory of something that you could have put in a previous answer. So what I'm saying is that things will have come to mind as you wrote. You may be writing your final 20-mark answer, 25-mark answer, or whatever it might be. You might be writing it out, and as you write, something comes to mind. Oh, that's right, that should have been in that question that was question 2. And if you give yourself sufficient time at the end of your exam, you can go back and fill those gaps. Whereas if you haven't planned your time effectively, you haven't planned in some checking time at the end of the exam, you'll know that there's gaps in questions at the start, but you won't have given yourself enough time to go back and fill those in. So things will come to mind as you write through your exam that relate to previous questions. Give yourself time to check those answers and amend some of those answers and add some bits in at the end of your exam. So read, put your pen down and read the paper. Plan, decide what questions you're going to attack first. Maybe what topics or what types of questions you want to do first. Then start your writing, write your answers. And finally, leave yourself some time to check through your answers at the end, making sure that you've got time to go back and fill any gaps. Those are my kind of 4 top tips for organising your time when it comes to exam technique. So I hope that's been helpful for you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more of this sort of thing. If you've got any really good exam techniques that I've not mentioned, tips or helpful strategies for when you're in the exam hall itself, when you're actually sat at your desk writing, put them in the comments. Perhaps we can have a little chat about them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.